The first era, beginning with the founding of the Cameron dynasty and ending with the assassination of Emperor Riemann Cyrodiil III, was a largely tumultuous time that ultimately led to the rise of man as far as the power system in Tamriel. Before this, it was mostly elves, hence the name, the Merethic era of the elves previously. But this kind of just set the foundation for what an imperial empire or a Cyrodiilian empire would be. And it kind of just really set up every other era. So, with that being said, first, I want to apologize for the extended wait for this video, but like I mentioned in the last one, the closer we get to the modern era, the more information is retained, and thus, the longer it takes to relay all of that information. So it just took me forever to just get all the info, all the pertinent information. Obviously, I didn't include every single thing because there's some stuff that are just one-offs, like this guy wrote this book, but that's the only thing this guy's known for, so there's no reason for me to include that. But all of the important stuff I included. Yeah, essentially, the first era lasted 2,920 years, although there was a dragon break in there, so it's kind of wishy-washy. I wouldn't say that that's an exact amount. That being said, let's start from the beginning. So, the first era began with the founding of the Cameron dynasty. King Eplier of Valenwood founds the Cameron dynasty by uniting all of the different Valenwood provinces, tribes, whatever you want to call them. And this was considered a major feat because before this, nobody could do that. They were all bickering, they were all fighting each other. Now they are all united, and that was such a feat that it began the first era. Now, the first era, year 20, was the first mention of the Psijic order. Bornet, I butchered that, a renowned Breton sage, is the author of a book where he speaks of his trip to the Isle of Artaeum, including the meeting with the right master of the Psijics of the time, Iachesis. Alright, disclaimer, I'm gonna butcher every single name in this era, so bear with me. Basically, why are the Psijics unique? Now, you obviously deal with them in Skyrim in the College of Winterhold, but what makes them unique in the Elder Scrolls universe is their practice of magic is different. They don't practice magic, they practice mysticism, which is known as the practice of the Old Way, the Old El-Nafe. This is what the Aldmer originally used instead of magic. It concentrates on meditation and a study to bind forces of nature. In my opinion, it's somewhat similar to the Greybeards, how they do a lot of meditation for the Way of the Voice. It is the same thing, but more magical rather than just like shouting. Now, in the first era, year 68, the last two ships from Atmora arrive in Tamriel. It's mostly full of corpses. That's kind of the only thing we really know about it. Then, beginning in the 2nd century, first era 113, Harold is born. He later becomes the first Nordic ruler, and in the year 139, he orders a campaign against the remaining snow elves in the Lake Hanrich region. This is the lake next to Riften in Skyrim. One of King Harold's armies also discovers Forelhost, which is where a remnant group of the dragon cult resides. You can find Forelhost in Skyrim as well. Now, in year 140, Skorm Snowstrider takes Forelhost. He loses half of his men to poisoned wells, and all of the cultists had abandoned life, per se. I don't know how much more in-depth I can go into that. But yeah, if you go into the dungeon of Forelhost in Skyrim, you will be able to read about these events. Then, in year 143, 3 years later, King Harold officially conquers Skyrim. He becomes the first High King, and then in year 198 is the Scouring of Wendelbeck. This is essentially a Ayleid civil war called the Narfinzel Schism. It's basically internal fighting of Ayleids of Aedra worshippers versus Daedra worshippers. Now, the Ayleids are mainly known for Daedra worship, right? So one could imagine that there's less Aedra worshippers, and so the Daedra worshippers won. Later, due to this, the group of Aedra worshippers that survived do not end up helping the Ayleids during the Elysian Rebellion. So this kind of in some small way could have led to the downfall of the Ayleids, honestly. Now, moving into the 3rd century, the first era, year 200, the Tamrillian tractates are written by Kosi. They're just general historic documents that Tamrillian scholars still reference today. It's somewhat important just because there's a lot of random stuff in there that's used and sourced and all that fun jazz. 21 years later, in year 221 of the First Era, King Harold dies at the age of 108. Due to his death, the Moot is created, which is basically a vote. All of the Jarls of Skyrim get together and vote on the next High King. Hjalmar, Harold's son, wins the Moot, takes the throne. Sometime following Harold's death, we don't know exactly the time period, but the Dwemer discover Aetherium. This is another thing you can learn about in Skyrim in the Aetherium Wars quest. Essentially, Archingthams, Raldbethar, Mazulft, and Betharzel form an alliance in order to create an Aetherium forge under the city of Bethalft. They use this alliance to research Aetherium, create new objects, things like that. Eventually, the alliance breaks down and the Aetherium Wars begin. They all fight each other for the power of Aetherium. And this war seems to go on for several decades, but we don't know a ton about it other than it kind of decimated them. In year 222, King Hjalmar dies of unknown causes. That's literally all we get for that. But we do know that his younger brother, Viraj the Gifted, takes the throne. Okay, so dude dies of suspicious causes, and then his brother takes the throne. Nothing suspicious about that. In the year 227, the gradual massacre begins. There's not a ton of real information on what this is. The only thing that we know is that Viraj the Gifted is also known as Viraj the Butcher by a lot of elven races. That, combined with the info that Viraj led a campaign of Nordic expansion, leads me to believe that this was basically another genocide against elven races by the Nords. What else is new, I suppose? But that is not specifically stated anywhere that I can find. That is just my belief. In the year 240, the Skyrim conquests begin in earnest. So there were kind of, different skirmishes before this, but this is when they roll their sleeves up and they get serious. There's a lot of strange accounts of this. Some say that it's supposed to last until year 272, which is 32 years. Others say that it lasts until year 415. So that's fun Elder Scrolls history stuff. Basically, this is the first full empire of the Nords. They expand across Morrowind and High Rock. At some point after year 240, we don't know exactly when, just like the Aetherium Wars, this is something that we know it's around this time, but we don't know the exact time. At some point during this time, King Geller becomes High King, and he conquers the Dwemer city-states that were weakened by the Aetherium Wars. 2 years later, in year 242, is the beginning of the Elysian Slave Rebellion. Elysia, known as the Slave Queen eventually, along with Mori House, Breath of Kine, who is the son of Kine and is considered a man-beast or something like that, and Pelinal Whitestrake, who we referenced in the last video. He's a figure that reappears on and on and on through the ages. He kind of reincarnates. Those three were kind of the main leaders of the Elysian Rebellion. And Mori House was technically the son of Kine, so he's considered a demigod, and him and Elysia were a couple. They were lovers. 1 year later, the White Gold Tower is taken by the rebels. That's pretty good turnaround time, to be honest. This is the founding of the Elysian Empire. It's the first human empire out of Cyrodiil, and there are certain Ayleids that assisted in the Elysian Rebellion, and they're allowed to maintain their rule over certain provinces of Cyrodiil, kind of like, Jarls in Skyrim. And the empire goes on to prosper until year 498, so it's a 255-year empire, which, not bad. Elysia creates the 8 Divines pantheon that is still used today. It's kind of a combination of Nordic and Elven gods. She does this to make sure that the empire has one religion, and it combines all of them to try to make everybody a little bit happy. Now, during this battle of the White Gold Tower, Pelinal Whitestrake single-handedly defeats many Ayleid kings, including the most famous being Umaril the Unfeathered, who is also basically a demigod. He's like the Trinimac of the Ayleids. He's kind of a guardian spirit. He is very powerful. Now, after this battle with Umaril, it is said that Pelinal was very weakened. Obviously, he just fought a demigod, and he is descended upon by the remaining elves and cut into 8 pieces. The number 8 is kind of a significant number in the Ayleid pantheon religion, so that is why he was cut into 8 pieces specifically. In year 244, Kynes Aegis is founded by Voldemar Hookhand. This is an island in the Sea of Ghosts off the coast of Skyrim. You go there during a quest in Skyrim, I believe. I think it's the one with the East Empire Company, and there's some like pirates and stuff there. But there are signs of the dragon cult on that island, which means that the island was technically settled earlier than Voldemar Hookhand arrived there. But this is the first recorded case of the island being inhabited. In year 246, Daggerfall is founded as the capital of High Rock in the Iliac Bay. And in year 2... Wait 1 second. Did you guys hear that? If you didn't, feel free to rewind a couple seconds and listen really closely. What you will hear is a slight bump in the background of when I'm talking. That is me fidgeting with my water bottle like this. I don't know if you guys do this, but when I do things, especially when I'm talking, I move my hands a lot and I like to fidget with things. And you will see throughout this video that I fidget with my water bottle a little bit here and there. So I'm just going to make a deal with you guys. You pretend you don't hear it, and I will place my water bottle on the ground for future videos, and you will never have to worry about it again. Deal? Okay, deal.
I'll make that deal. How about you, Yudovich? You make that deal?
I'd make that deal.
I don't blame you. Damn good deal.
66, Alicia dies or ascends, depending on who you ask. Basically, she is sick and dying, and Akatosh arrives at the White Gold Tower and transforms her into the first gem in the Amulet of Kings. She becomes the first Cyrodiilic saint, and this is the beginning of the covenant between Imperials and Akatosh. This is a very big focus point of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. This covenant supposedly protects Tamriel from Oblivion, different raids and invasions from Oblivion, from different Daedric princes, so long as an Dragonborn Emperor holds the throne and the Dragonfires stay lit. Now, there's a lot of cases of invasion throughout history, so I don't know how effective this covenant actually is, to be honest. But basically, after that, Belharza, the son of Alicia and Morihaus, becomes the second emperor of the Elysian Empire. Belharza is a demigod due to his father, and he is known as the Man Bull. In the 4th century, year 340, Valenwood forms a trade treaty with the Elysian Order. The Elysian Order is a little different than the Elysian Empire. This is important because the Elysian Order is a religious group focused on one god, referred to as the One. It was created by an Imga named Maruk. Now, Imga are a race of ape-like people that originate in Valenwood. They're typically known to imitate elves and they see elves as their overlords. Now, Maruk was unique, where he is the exact opposite. He despises elves. So the religion that he created, other than their focus on one god, despises elven rule, which leads to a lot of discrimination against elves by the Elysian Order. Now, Maruk claims to receive visions from the spirit of Alicia when he founds this order. I doubt this is true. I'm gonna be honest. I bet he's just lying to create a religion so he can hate elves. But that's what he says. And they basically control the Elysian Empire for a very, very long time, and they do a lot of terrible things, which we will learn about soon. In year 355, Clan Dureni rises to power in High Rock. In year 358, Skyrim loses significant amounts of land in the Reach to the Dureni hegemony, despite getting support from the Cyrodiilian Empire, or Emperor Amiel at the time. In year 361, the Elysian Order officially take over the Empire through a coup. They enforce the Elysian doctrines, which focuses on one god. They suppress most forms of humor and entertainment. They are like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm assuming the Elder Scrolls depiction of like old Catholicism, just like very strict, very rule focused, one god, obviously, and yeah. Small amounts of local Ayleids that were originally allowed to maintain their control over lands because they helped the rebellion, They are officially outlawed. Most of them flee to Valenwood, and that's that. In the year 369, King Borgus of Winterhold dies to the Wild Hunt. And you'll kind of learn a little bit about this if you do the Thane ship quests in Winterhold, where you go and find, I believe, his helm or something like that. Basically, the Wild Hunt is like a self-defense mechanism for the Bosmer. It was brought about by their followings of Y'ffre, known as the Green Pact. When they first arrived in Valenwood, they made a deal with the deity, the biggest deity of Valenwood, which is kind of like it's just like a nature agreement. Basically, he turns them into druids. Basically, the Bosmer are essentially druids. The Green Pact is where they are not allowed to damage the plants or the plant life or trees or anything in Valenwood. They don't damage any of the nature. They are strictly carnivorous. They only eat animals. They don't eat any vegetation. And in exchange for that, the lands of Valenwood, the trees and stuff, kind of support them. And that's why you'll see a lot of cities in Valenwood are literally just in the trees. The trees shape themselves in ways to help facilitate the Bosmer's living. Now, the Wild Hunt itself, like I said, is a self-defense mechanism. It basically just transforms them into different kinds of monsters and beasts and throws them into an unstoppable, rage-filled horde of destruction. Nothing will stop them. I don't think there's any case of the Wild Hunt actually being beaten or defeated. You basically just run away and hide until it's over. King Borgus was attempting to create a joint war with Cyrodiil against the Bosmer when he died, and he was the last known king to wear the jagged crown until the events of Skyrim in the 4th era. Now, he had no living heirs, and the Moot failed to elect the next leader, as many of the Jarls disagreed on who should be king. And this leads to a civil war, surprise, surprise, called the War of Succession. This is basically an old day of the civil war that we have now. It is between the Western Holds and the Old Holds. So basically Whiterun, Solitude versus Windhelm, Winterhold, and this is back in previous Winterhold days when it was actually like still powerful and still meant something. Not much is known about the War of Succession, other than the fact that Windhelm is sacked at some point during the War of Succession, and due to all the infighting, Skyrim begins to lose a lot of its land in High Rock and Morrowind. In year 376, moving away from Skyrim, the emperors of Yokuda are overthrown. So we're going to talk a lot about the Yokudans, which are basically the Redguards, but this is before they went to Tamriel. This is their old land of Yokuda. So the emperors of Yokuda are overthrown in 376. They remain the figureheads of the empire, but they have no power. This begins a 300-year constant civil war between various warlords, warrior monks, and brigands just fighting over land because nobody has full control. The figureheads of the empire don't have any control, so it's just a bunch of city-states fighting each other for land. In the year 393, the Elysian Empire sacks the Ayleid Temple of Malada in eastern Cyrodiil, continuing their reign of terror on all elves they can find. Now, I'm not saying the Ayleids don't deserve it because they were pretty messed up with all their Daedra worship and gut gardens and stuff like that. But there are no good guys in the Elder Scrolls. So in the 5th century, Skyrim continues to lose foreign territories due to the War of Succession. In year 416, the Chimer and Dwemer form an alliance to fully eject the Nords from Morrowind, which at the time was called Resdayn. So those two words are interchangeable for me. If I say one or the other, I'm talking about Morrowind. The Dwemer clan Rorken rebelled against this alliance, and according to legend, the Rorken chieftain threw his mighty hammer, Volendrung, across Tamriel, promising to lead his clansmen to wherever it should fall. This is from the Pocket Guide to the First Empire, or Pocket Guide to the Empire, 1st edition, Hammerfell. You can read about that in the games. This land where his hammer falls is called Valenfell, or modern day Hammerfell, which, is fitting. Now, in the year 420, the War of Succession officially ends with Olaf One-Eye, the Jarl of Whiterun, becoming High King of Skyrim. Now, you will learn a lot about him in the questline for the Bard's College in Skyrim. According to legend, he is crowned after he defeats the dragon Numenex on Mount Anthor and traps him in the Whiterun Palace, which is named Dragon's Reach. Now, this legend is highly disputed and suspect because the fact that all of his witnesses of the battle go on to become extremely wealthy leads some to believe that they were just paid to give false testimony, which makes sense. You learn a lot about this during the Bard's College questline. Like I said, there was a poet named Svafnir who wrote an elegy defaming Olaf and dubbing him a traitor. This elegy is burned until only one copy remained, which was buried with Olaf in Dead Men's Respite. After the Bard's College questline, you can find Olaf in Sovngarde, where he says that he respects Svafnir as an honest opponent and wished to greet him as a friend in the Hall of Valor, which never seems to happen because I think Svafnir is one of the ones who unfortunately gets eaten by Alduin in the Mists. I don't think he ever makes his way to Sovngarde or to the actual Hall of Valor. Regardless, the Pact of Chieftains is signed and Olaf becomes the High King of Skyrim. During this time, the Rorken clan of Dwemer also officially arrive in Valenfell or Hammerfell. In the year 448, Rislav Lorich is born. This is the future king of Skingrad, and he's pretty important, so that's why we're mentioning it. His mother, Queen Lenata, dies shortly after childbirth. In the year 452, Olaf One-Eye dies. In the year 461, Gorius is crowned Emperor of the Elysian Empire. In year 472, the warring kingdoms of Skingrad and Kvatch make peace. Now, Rislav, who we mentioned a little earlier, appears in Kvatch court 6 years later, married to Beline, the daughter of King Dutinius of Kvatch. So it's kind of assumed that the two were married in year 472 to facilitate the peace, although nothing explicitly says this. Also, Rislav, you can read about in a book in Skyrim called Rislav the Righteous. This is where I'm getting most of this information, I would say. In year 477, Clan Durrani takes over significant portions of Hammerfell and Skyrim. In year 478, the Battle of Sungard occurs. The High King of Skyrim at the time, Kjork the White, is killed by Emperor Gorius. His son, Hoag Merkiller, becomes High King of Skyrim via the Moot, and he continues his fight against the Elysian Order because the Elysian Order is really strict, all those rules with the one god religion thing. Nobody really likes them, to be honest. During this time, a plague sweeps through Cyrodiil and kills Rislav's father, King Morris, along with all of his siblings in Skingrad. Rislav's only surviving brother was actually in the Imperial City as a priest of Maruk. He was a member of the Elysian Order, and the Maruk was the religion focused on the one god, right? And it's the official religion of the Empire at the time. And being a follower of it, Rislav's brother Dorald believes in the Empire, believes in the Order. As a follower of the religion, he believes that to resist the Empire is to resist the gods. So literally day one of him taking the throne, he immediately cedes Skingrad to the Empire. Just day one, all right, you guys get it. After that, Rislav finds out about that, and he's living in Kvatch with his wife because of the peace treaty and all that fun jazz. After he hears about that, he immediately rides to Skingrad with 24 of Kvatch's cavalry, so 24. That not very many people. The guards of Skingrad mostly let him in with little fighting because none of them like Dorald. They're like, yo, you just showed up and decided we're under the Empire now? That's kind of messed up. So they didn't really stop Rislav from walking in. Rislav walks in, he kills Dorald, and is crowned King of Skingrad. He immediately recedes the Skingrad kingdom from the Empire once again, and the Emperor Gorius, who hears about this, rides to Skingrad with an army, and I quote, so large that the beast of Aniquina could hear its march from hundreds of miles away. That's also from Rislav the Righteous, the book. Upon arrival, Emperor Gorius is greeted by an unperturbed Rislav, who, despite being vastly outnumbered, is still set to fight. He jests to the Empire that his army is too large to be accommodated by Skingrad, and he should have written beforehand. So this is basically him saying, yo, you guys are here to hang out and, visit or whatever. You should have let us know. Yeah, it's just a joke to show that I guess he's not scared at all. After this, the battle begins. The location of the battle is in a valley, so surrounded by mountains, right? There's one entrance, one exit. Rislav blocks the original entrance once the Emperor arrives. so they can't turn back. And after that, Rizlov runs from the Emperor westward towards the only exit of the valley, while his army surrounding from either side there in the mountains are raining arrows down onto the Emperor's army. So with the valley bordered by mountains and the entrance blocked, the Elysian army has no choice but to follow after Rizlov westward, being assaulted by arrows the whole time and just chasing after him. After riding for a while, they arrive in the highland forest where Rizlov's father-in-law, the King of Kvatch, awaits with his own army. Now they are still severely outnumbered, but the army of the Empire is so exhausted and so low morale that they win very convincingly. The battle supposedly only takes an hour, and those that don't die in the Empire's army retreat back to the Imperial City, going west and then north and then back around to the Imperial City again. With this victory, the start of the downfall of the Elysian Empire begins, because everyone else sees that this dude, Rizlov, with very little support, was able to defeat them. So everyone else is like, yeah, let's get on this. Let's end this empire. So they're all just joining in. They gain more and more support. Now, in the year 479, Riain Dureni, the leader of the Dureni at the time, outlaws the Elysian religion to the one god. Now, I keep mentioning the Dureni, but I guess I didn't go in depth on them. They're basically a clan in High Rock who are very wealthy. They are from the Merethic era, where they found the Crystal Tower and in the Iliac Bay region, and they're just very strong. They're a very powerful clan of elves who are very intertwined with the history of High Rock. So they outlaw the religion. In year 480, Aiden Dureni, the cousin of Riain, obviously, wins many minor battles against the Empire. And then in year 482, Raven Dureni, the inventor of enchanting, helped secure the final victory against the Empire in the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, alongside the last king of the Aelids and Nords from Skyrim, following High King Hoag Merkiller. I mean, to be fair, this fight isn't even fair. If this person invented enchanting, could you imagine running at people and your whole army just has normal swords, and then the other team's got swords that like light you on fire? Like, you'd be like, what the hell is this? This has never been done before. Hoag, the High King of Skyrim, as well as the last king of the Aelids, are reported to have died in this battle. Year 498 was the end of the late Aeliad period. Although they achieved victory at the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, this victory weakened the elves from Somerset's grip over High Rock and made it possible for the Bretons to retake High Rock for themselves. And due to this, the Dureni clan, being elves instead of Bretons, they fall out of power around this time. So they won the battle against the Empire, lost the war by not maintaining control over High Rock. Moving on to the 6th century, year 500, a song is made about Wulfarth of Atmora. Following the death of High King Hoag Merkiller at the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, Wulfarth is made High King via the Pact of Chieftains. According to legend, his Thu'um was so powerful that he could not swear into office for fear of blowing everyone away. His first edict is to return the Nords to the ancient Nordic pantheon, putting to the stakes any priests who followed the edicts of the Elysian Empire. His zealotry earned him the nickname Shor's Tongue and Ysmir, Dragon of the North. He is not the only notable figure in history to be given this name. Talos. He's not Talos, but he got the same nickname just a lot earlier. High Rock is officially freed from Aldmeri tyranny around this time. In the 7th century, year 609, King Thagor, or Thagore, however you say that, of Daggerfall, defeats the army of Glenpoint. Now, the only reason I'm mentioning this is because this victory pushed Daggerfall to prominence in High Rock, and it has maintained its dominance as a city-state in the country ever since. Manzil Seznit also becomes prominent in Yokudan society at this time. He controls the entire empire of Yokuda for 8 years. Now, obviously, this is the early Redguards before their migration to Hammerfell. I mentioned this earlier, but just remember, keep this in mind. If I accidentally say Redguards, I mean Yokudans for now. In the year 617, Manzil Seznit is assassinated, and Randik Torn, a commoner, takes over the government. He continues Manzil's work in unifying the empire and was known for being ruthless when putting down any insurrections under his rule. He was just completely like, all right, you're rising up. No one's left alive. You are all dead. His most famous act was enacting the law Torn's Sword Hunt. This law outlawed the wearing of swords by anyone who wasn't a sword singer, giving them elevated status in society. Now, sword singers are essentially people that studied the art of the sword so much that it gives them certain powers, certain tonal. It was mostly dedicated to tonal magic, which is a lot of earth magic stuff that the dwarves also did. And the most powerful of the sword singers were able to create their own like wind sword. They didn't have to carry a sword. They could literally mental image print one into the world for themselves that's unbreakable. Now, this is kind of another similarity to our own world, right? The Redguards or the Yokudans very much mirror feudal Japan, the constant warring states battling for control, the elevated status of special warriors, aka the sword singers or the samurai. It's very fascinating to me to find the different similarities between the Elder Scrolls and our world and just see where the developers kind of pulled certain things. It's awesome, in my opinion. That's why I love Elder Scrolls so much. But regardless, in the year 660, Moloch, the Nordic pantheon version of Malakath, is defeated at the Battle of Dragonwall. Legend says that his rage was so great that when he expelled it into the sky, that was the cause of the eruption of Red Mountain 8 years later. Obviously, that's disputed, but that's what legend says. And then 8 years later, in year 668, the Red Mountain erupts, causing the sun to be blocked out by ash for an entire year across the continent. This is known as the Year of Winter in Summer by the Nords and the sun's death by the Khajiit. This full year of no sun caused huge destruction to plant life, obviously, and is considered one of the reasons that Nirnroot is so scarce across the continent. Also in this year, according to historian Borgesilas Myler, definitely butchered that, this is the year that all of the separate Dwemer city-states were called together by one of their powerful philosopher sorcerers, potentially Kagranak, not 100% confirmed, but he is mentioned in some documents. He calls them to embark on a journey of such importance that they all abandon their cities to join the quest as an entire race. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit later at the Battle of Red Mountain and the disappearance of the Dwemer and all that fun stuff. Now, in the year 700, a dragon break occurs, making it so that there is not one correct account of what happened at the Battle of Red Mountain. Dragon breaks are basically Bethesda's way of retconning things. It's basically a split in the timeline, resulting in parallel realities in which multiple different outcomes occur at the same time. So, timeline, they all split, and after that event, they all merge back together, which makes all of the events that occurred during that time true at the same time, even when they contradict one another. Everyone is experiencing the same event very differently, but it is all correct. This is basically how Bethesda is able to canonize a bunch of different events in Elder Scrolls, as well as the Elder Scrolls games, right? Because you can look it back and say that the Hero of Kvatch was also a member of the Dark Brotherhood, but he also was not a member of the Dark Brotherhood. Oh, and the last Dragonborn from Skyrim was known to destroy the Dark Brotherhood, but he also became the Listener. Things like that. It's just an easy way for them to retcon things, but this is an example of a dragon break. Now, during this same year, the Battle of Red Mountain occurs. So, due to the dragon break, there is no way to know what really occurred and what didn't. Some accounts say that it was a battle between the Dwemer, along with the Chimer's great house Dagoth, versus the rest of the great houses of the Chimer. This is kind of the established truth. This is what most people believe, but some people also say that the battle also involved the Nords, the Orcs, and even some Khajiit. Interestingly, in Skyrim, one of the etched tablets on the way up to High Hrothgar says that Jurgen Windcaller and his tongues went away from Red Mountain humbled. Now, that's the only mention of Jurgen at the battle, but it is one that we literally get in-game of Skyrim, right? Now, the only completely agreed upon facts are that after the battle, the Dwemer disappeared, never to be seen again, other than that one Dwemer who was in Oblivion at the time. I can't remember his name. The other agreed upon fact is that the Dwemer and the House of Dagoth lost. Obviously, the Dwemer disappeared, and Dagoth was killed. Some stories differ on who actually killed Dagoth, but all of them say that he was killed by someone. Now, there's a lot of people who say that the Dwemer disappearance was because Kagranak was they were losing the battle, so they decided to work on the heart of Lorkhan, and that made them disappear, transported them somewhere else, or erased them, we don't know. Interestingly, actually, in certain interviews, Bethesda employees I think Todd Howard actually says that they know what happened, but they don't think they're ever going to reveal it just because the mystery is so awesome. And I actually appreciate that a lot. I think a lot of Elder Scrolls fans appreciate that a lot. That there are certain mysteries that we're not meant to know, but there is an answer. We just don't know what it is. So this is the end of the War of the First Council, which was a religious war between the Dwemer and Dagoth versus the other Dunmer houses. In the year 720, Brandar Hunding is born in Yokuda. His grandfather was a retainer of Manzil Sesnit, who we mentioned earlier, and led a lot of the reunification battles. In year 734, Frandar's father dies to one of the many insurrections in Yokuda when Frandar is 14. So Frandar is left to support his mother and 4 brothers without their father. He was extremely skilled at the sword. He was highly sought after as a bodyguard, and due to his skill, he was also challenged a lot by those wishing to gain fame upon defeating him. Another similarity to ancient Japanese society, right? Sword singers were known to go on pilgrimage around Yokuda, challenging others to gain fame. Now, in the year 737, Randik Torn dies. He was the emperor or leader of Yokuda at the time, and a civil war breaks out in earnest all across Yokuda. In the year 750, Frandar Hunding has made a name for himself by winning over 90 duels. He's known as an Ansei, which is the name for those who reach the peak of sword singing. They are the ones who are able to summon their own Shihai, which is a spirit sword. They don't have to hold a sword. They can literally mental image it into the world, and it's unbreakable. It is very different from a normal spirit sword. So there are basically 2 types of spirit swords. There's one type, this is the Shihai, that you can use for battle, unbreakable, literally makes you OP. And then there's the other one that all sword singers can create through their training. But that is not, the normal ones don't have enough substance. They can't really be used for combat. So once you are able to create one that's actually used for combat, you become known as an Ansai, which is just the top of the top. Peak sword fighters, they are unstoppable forces of combat, basically. In the year 760, Divad Hunding, the future most well-known Redguard hero and son of Frandar Hunding, is born. 11 years later, in year 771, Divad enters the Hall of the Virtues of War to begin his training as a sword singer. Now, 5 years later, Divad is resentful of his father, who's never around due to his traveling of Yokuda to participate in his sword singing duels. So basically, Frandar was raised in the Hall of the Virtues of War, training and things like that, and his father, Frandar, was never around. He was always out traveling, working, fighting people to the death. And due to this, Divad is very resentful. He ends up leaving the Hall of the Virtues of War and joins a circus, of all things. In year 780, Frandar Hunding writes the Book of Circles. Actually, let's go back a little bit. Divad, while he did leave the Hall of Virtues of War, it is said that he still, even while he was doing his acting in the circus and all that stuff, still secretly studied the sword singing art on his own. Okay, back into the present. Year 780, Frandar writes the Book of Circles, a compilation of all of his sword singing knowledge and tactics, allowing future sword singers to learn and emulate his undefeated fighting style. He's essentially retired at this point and is living as a hermit in a cave in Mount Hatu. He's in the middle of writing his own death poem when he is interrupted by other sword singers desperate for his help. Now, during this time that Frandar's hiding in a cave, Hira, known as the Last Emperor, comes to power. And Hira, in an attempt to gain full control over the empire, persecutes the sword singers, eliminating most and arresting the rest. Divad, Frandar's son, is one of the singers that Hira attempts to arrest. At this time, after leaving the circus, he becomes a well-renowned musician in Yokuda. And because of this fame, Hira couldn't simply kill him. So he sent 100 of his most elite soldiers to arrest him. Now, although a musician, Divad still practiced his own sword singing in secret, like I said earlier. So when attempting to arrest him, the soldiers hit his elderly mother because they were dining, they were having dinner together, and the soldier showed up to arrest him. And Divad was like, "All right, I guess you're arresting me." But in the process, they hit his mom, who was old as heck, killing her on the spot. Now, previously compliant Divad becomes immediately hostile, obviously. he kills 4 of the soldiers and escapes. So all of the sword singers that escape from the persecution, as well as Divad, go to Mount Hatu, where Divad's father is writing his death poem, and they beg him to take control of their group to defend against the last emperor. Brandar initially rejects, ejecting everyone from the cave until Divad enters alone. No official description is given on what occurs in the cave, but for several hours, flashes of light can be seen. I'm guessing they fought with their own Shihai against each other. Eventually, they leave to the cave together, and Frandar officially takes control of the sword-singing refugee army. Frandar enacts his plan known as the Hammer and Anvil to help in their battle against the Emperor and his army of orcs, several 100,000 strong. It is said that their army was outnumbered 30 to 1. Frandar's Hammer and Anvil plan is to essentially lead the Emperor's army deeper and deeper into the mountain range, fighting 6 battles. This is to help the sword singers gain experience to learn Frandar's way of sword singing from his Book of Circles and become more powerful. He's literally having them fight 6 battles to the death to gradually learn and become more powerful to get them ready for the 7th. By the time of the 7th battle, they are at the foot of Mount Hatu. It is said that the ground is watered in blood. By the end of the day, less than 20,000 sword singers remain, but they were victorious, having killed more than 300,000 of the Empire's army. After this battle, the sword singers packed their bags, mourned their dead, and followed Hunding to the port city of Arch, and left a country where they were no longer welcome. The new land they arrived in was named Hammerfell in honor of their hammer and anvil strategy from the last battle, and they adopted the name Redguards. So it's called Valenfell by the Dwemer, Hammerfell by the Redguards, and obviously the Redguards are the ones who end up taking it over, so that's the name that we go with. In honor to Hunding, the great warrior prince, each household in Hammerfell is supposed to have a place by the hearth with enough space to hold the Book of Circles. So if that's not in Elder Scrolls 6, I'm gonna be pissed. Anyways, in year 792, Yokuda is sunk. There are different theories as to what sinks it. Among these theories is that a group of Ansai, the Hiradirge, used their magic to sink it after having lost a decisive battle. You know, kind of like if I can't have it, no one can. But that's not obviously confirmed. In the 9th century, year 800, the city of Wayrest is founded in Hyrok. In the year 803, Yokudans arrive in the Iliac Bay and Daggerfall after leaving sinking Yokuda, and in year 808, Ragada from Yokuda arrive in Valenfell. The Ragada are essentially a warband. Though it remains unknown exactly what happened to the islands of Yokuda in the First Era, we do know that the Ragada, or a warrior wave, of Yokudans arrived in the south of Hammerfell, having fled catastrophic destruction. It did not take long for these fierce warlords to carve out a home in Tamriel with their iconic curved swords, but they made few friends in their initial hostility. This is from a book, The Warlords of the Ragada. Most of the races that they pushed out of Valenfell, later named Hammerfell, were orcs and goblins, led by an orc warrior, Thulgeg. Thulgeg's army flees northeast into the Rothgarian Mountains, the future founding place of the city of Orsinium. Now, in the 10th century, year 907, the Dureni, specifically Peregrine Dureni, repelled the Yokudan invasion of Belfiera in Hyrok using a combination of naval power and water magic. 43 years later, in year 950, due to the constant raiding and pillaging of the orcs of Orsinium, the king of Daggerfall, Joyli, and Gaiden Shinji, the leader of the Order of Diagna at the time, form an alliance to destroy Orsinium. Now, the Order of Diagna is a group of Redguard warriors, and the alliance against the common enemy of orcs managed to bring an end to the previous hostility between the Redguards and Bretons. Gaiden Shinji is known as the founder of the arena in the Imperial City, and he is also the creator of the quote, "The best techniques are passed on by the survivors." We may delve more into him in a future video because he is a pretty unique character, but for now, he dies during the siege of Orsinium, and he's actually killed during a duel against orcish hero Baloth Bloodtusk. According to the stories, King Joyli of Daggerfall ordered General Mercedine of the Reachmen to assassinate both of them during their duel. This strange and dishonorable behavior by King Joily leads credence to the next event that we're about to talk about, because it is kind of disputed whether it's true or not. But the fact that King Joily was willing to do this just makes me think that he's a piece of shit. So I'll believe any bad thing that they say he did. In the year 973, the battle at Bankarai Pass takes place. According to the first-hand account of the Redguard Michaela Leckie, the Bretons of Daggerfall and their King Joily used the alliance against the Orcs of Orsinium as a chance to strike against the Redguards of Sentinel. Though during the battle, Michaela awakened her Ansai and managed to kill King Joily, forcing the Daggerfall army to retreat. And she dies shortly after while recording her thoughts in a, what are they called? Like memory stone or something like that. Basically, one of those stones that she can talk into. And that is the only first-hand account we have of the battle. So obviously it's disputed, and she's dying, so she lost a lot of blood. And she says some things that are wrong in it, like she says the crystal tower is somewhere that it's not, or something like that. So some of her words are disputed, but I absolutely believe that it's mostly true, because King Joily just seems like a piece of shit. After that, 7 years later, in year 980, Orsinium falls to the combined forces of Daggerfall, Sentinel, and the Order of Diagna. Honestly, I have no idea how these people of Sentinel and the Order of Diagna were like, yeah, these Daggerfall people, they might have betrayed us twice, but they're pretty cool guys. Let's keep teaming up with them. Like that doesn't make any sense for me. I'm sorry. I would have annihilated Daggerfall. But these people are more forgiving than me, I guess. In year 983, the city of Evermore is founded in High Rock by the River Horse Bretons. This opens up the, get ready for me to butcher this, the Biolse River, and allows a lot of new trade to occur, causing large technological advancements. And then in the year 989, Wayrest becomes a larger city. Previously, it was more of a smaller town. It becomes a bustling metropolis in the year of 989. In the 11th century, year 1030, Fowlin, meaning Red Eagle in the tongue of the Reach, is one of the 10 kings of the Reachmen at this time. Empress Hestra expands the Cyrodiilian Empire into the Reach, either defeating in battle or negotiating the surrender of each of the kings of the Reach until only Fowlin remains. Fowlin wishes to continue to fight against Hestra and her army, but he is cast out by the elders, who are afraid and instead surrender themselves. Fowlin and those who follow him essentially become the first Forsworn, raiding and pillaging every imperial settlement and fortress they can find. It seems to be a losing battle, as for every imperial control and garrison they wiped out, yet more seem to march from the Green South to replace them. This is a quote from the Legend of Red Eagle book. Red Eagle is something that you can come across in Skyrim, actually. You can come across his blade. You can come across a quest from the book where you take his blade to his resting place, and it's kind of like a mini dungeon with a little boss, and it's pretty cool, actually. But regardless, after or during this time, Fowlin makes a deal with a Hagraven and gives up his heart, will, and humanity for power. This deal makes him into the first Forsworn Briarheart. It is reported that from that day forth, his eyes burned coldly in those days, black opals reflecting a mind not entirely his own. Regardless, his newfound power leads to success. In the next 2 years, the invaders are all but driven from the Reach. Hestra forms one last army to lay siege to Fowlin's stronghold until he meets them on battle. He literally walks onto the battlefield alone. He kills 1,000 soldiers by himself, and the army retreats. Yet, when night fell, so too did he. The warriors who came to him said Fowlin's eyes were clear again on that final night. Before he was buried, he swore an oath to his people. When at last the Reach is free, return his blade to his tomb, and he will rise and lead them again. Now, like I said earlier, you can find Red Eagle as a Draugr in his tomb in the Reach after returning his sword to the pedestal in the middle of the tomb. And then after that battle, his sword will become a different sword with another effect. Now, in year 1033, Empress Hestra expands into Blackmarsh. It's known as Argonia at that time. So those two, just like when I say Yokudans and Redguards they're kind of interchangeable. Argonia and Blackmarsh are kind of interchangeable for me as well. Technically, they're not the same thing, but for me, if I say Blackmarsh, I mean Argonia, and I will talk about the difference in a little bit. But she expands into Argonia for the sole purpose of eliminating the pirates that have been constantly raiding the coast of the Topal Bay. Once the pirates are eliminated, including their leader, Red Brahmin, the Empire backs out of Blackmarsh. well, Argonia. In the 12th century, year 1100, Ferrango Gardner from a very successful merchant family becomes the first king of Wayrest, officially turning Wayrest into a city-state. In the year 1188, Fervidius Tharn is said to become the leader of the Marukadi Selective. This is a small fanatical group inside of the Elysian Order. Wow, a group even more fanatical than the Order themselves. Insane. But this group was wholly dedicated to eliminating all traces of elven influence from the religions of man. They were especially focused on the fact that Akatosh, dragon god of time, was not, in their eyes, the same as Auriel from the elven pantheon. This is important for later. Just remember, Akatosh, god of time. This is significant because the Marukadi Selective was considered an internal threat to the Elysian Order itself, which Fervidius was the highest ranking member of. So essentially, this means that he was leading both sides of the conflict. Double agent. Now, in the 13th century, something known as the Middle Dawn begins. This is a dragon break that occurs for an estimated 1008 years. This dragon break is caused by the Marukadi Selective. They utilize never before seen rituals channeling the powers of the universe itself to cause a staff or tower, by different accounts, to appear. They danced on it until it trembled and split into 8 pieces, thus breaking time and the non-linearity from the Dawn era before Akatosh, the dragon god of time, came into being, occurred again. That's why it's called the Middle Dawn. Every civilization has different accounts of what happened. Some wars occurred for some people, but not for others. The sun changed color for some, and the gods walked among some of the mortals. Even the length of the dragon break is only an estimation by the Elder Council, and due to the conflicting events during this time, I'm not going to go in depth on each event because obviously they're all conflicting. There's no way to know what's true. So I'm just going to give a general overview of events that were reported to have occurred. At some point during this time, the city of Skywatch is sacked by the Slode in the Somerset Isles. The Battle of Dunkreag Bridge occurs between Anticlear and Sensford in High Rock, and the Thracian Plague is created by the Slode, which eventually goes on to kill half of Tamriel's entire population. Now, in the 23rd century, year 2208, the Middle Dawn supposedly ends. In the year 2260, the Thracian Plague reaches elsewhere, decimating the population to extent that their 16 city-states are reduced to 2. The 2 remaining were named Palatine and Nicanor, or known by their Cyrodiilic names Palatine and Iniquina. In the 24th century, year 2305, the Elysian Order attempts to bring High Rock back into the Empire, but fails after a 5-month siege of Bankarai. In the year 2321, a bunch of infighting within the Elysian Order becomes a full-scale war, known as the War of Righteousness. This war will essentially destroy the Elysian Order. Throughout the war, many different locations were destroyed, along with a lot of their historic texts, and Daggerfall, whose population was already cut in half by the Thracian Plague, was then cut in half again from the War of Righteousness. In the year 2331, the War of Righteousness comes to an end. In the 28th century, the year 2700, the Saci of Akavir invade Tamriel, beginning in Skyrim and cutting a path through to the south. 2 years later, in the year 2702, most of the citizens of Wayrest are forced to move into the Gardner Estate, which is basically the city keep, to protect themselves against pirates, the Akaviri, and the Thracian Plague. In the year 2703, the Akaviri are defeated at the Battle of Pale Pass. Now, you can't see, but I'm putting defeated in quotation marks because they weren't really defeated. Upon learning that the person they were fighting against, Riemann Cyrodiil, was Dragonborn, they immediately surrendered and swore loyalty to him. They claimed that their invasion was due to them searching for a Dragonborn, and they had finally found one. So Riemann becomes emperor of the Cyrodiilic Empire, and the Akaviri become his personal guard, known as the Dragon Guard, and they will eventually become the Blades. In the year 2704, the Reach is split between High Rock and Skyrim by Riemann in order to significantly weaken the Reachmen and to prevent one group from having full control over the region's silver mines. So he literally takes the Reach, splits it in half, gives half to Skyrim, half to High Rock. In the year 2714, Valenwood is defeated and taken over by the Empire. While the Cameron dynasty, which began in the First Era, still existed, they essentially had no power. Riemann granted independence to each tree thane of the dynasty, which are basically the leaders of the different city-states, and he did this to make sure that all of the different city-states would never be able to all unite together again to fight against their new occupiers. Riemann was very smart but ruthless. Now, in the year 2762, according to a tomb in Sankar Tor, this is the year that Riemann Cyrodiil dies. The quote on the tomb says, "Here lies Riemann of Cyrodiil. He defeated the Akaviri horde and brought peace to Tamriel." 2762. In the year 2794, Riemann Cyrodiil II is born, and he will later become the third empire of the new Cyrodiilian Empire. To be honest with you, I don't understand how this works, because how is he born 30 years after the first? Like, it makes me think that Riemann Cyrodiil II is just a decorative name, you know? It's not actually, he's not actually related to the first. But regardless, in the 29th century, year 2801, while Riemann II is growing up, Emperor Gustav rules the empire. He's generally considered a terrible and incompetent ruler. In this year, he orders the seizing of hostages in Markarth and Hroldan. You might recognize that name from Old Hroldan in Skyrim. It was originally a decent-sized settlement at this time, and the seizing of hostages was an attempt to ensure that the Jarls all met their quotas for conscriptions. That's insane. This guy's a moron. Basically, the hostages were ordered to be seized by the Dragon Guard, or the later Blades, and they did take the hostages, but they didn't treat them like them. They essentially just raised them in their temples and taught them and trained them just like any other normal Blades thing. The general consensus is that at this time, the Dragon Guard were good guys, and Emperor Gustav was not. Now, in the year 2804, the Winterhold Rebellion breaks out due to extremely high taxes and harsh policies to ensure the taxes were paid. Emperor Gustav orders the Dragon Guard to quell the rebellion, but they refuse. They believe that it would violate their oath of allegiance. And because of this, the Empire cuts all resources from Skyhaven Temple. They don't send them any more trade or anything like that. But because of agreements made with the local Reachmen, the temple is essentially self-sufficient. In the year 2805, an Akaviri that was denied entry into the Dragon Guard, named Kallian, leads the siege in Winterhold and sacks the city. After that, Emperor Gustav begins the siege on Skyhaven Temple. Little disclaimer here, I've literally been talking for an hour straight, so bear with me if I make some mistakes with, speaking and stuff like that. It is hard to talk for this long. In the year 2806, Gustav is deposed as emperor due to his overall incompetence and idiocy, and Riemann Cyrodiil II succeeds him. He immediately lifts the siege on Skyhaven Temple, and in year 2811, the battle between the last known Argonian army and the Cyrodiilic Empire is fought. This battle is known as the Battle of Argonia and results in the Argonian defeat. The Argonians retreat to their capital city of Hellstrom, known to be an impenetrable fortress deep in Blackmarsh. General Buko and his 4th Imperial Legion begin a campaign to conquer deep into Argonia. Now, 1 year later, Riemann Cyrodiil II is officially crowned emperor, and Blackmarsh is officially incorporated into the empire. So basically, the region that they cut out of Argonia is called Blackmarsh, and then the region that they haven't taken over yet is Argonia. They officially incorporated into the empire, but they really only control like the outskirts of Blackmarsh, because it's so difficult to get deep in there with all the marshes and deadly wildlife and the Argonians constantly harassing you. It is nearly impossible to take over all of Argonia with the power that the Hist has over it. In this same year, Alduin's Wall officially begins construction. 1 year later, several of the craftsmen working on the wall are dismissed because they seem too prideful, and the Dragon Guard believe that their pride will alter the wall's message and intended purpose as a gift to future generations. In year 2816, General Buko's legion is decimated until reinforcements are sent to assist, and Buko uses those reinforcements to begin the construction of a road, believing it would be instrumental in aiding the Legion with their supply chain troubles. Almost immediately upon starting construction, the Legionnaires are attacked day and night by the native Argonians. In the year 2818, Alduin's Wall is officially completed, and in the year 2820, General Buko's legion is decimated again. And due to this decimation, he almost loses his life to a mutiny. After this failed coup, Buko finally orders to retreat from the interior of Blackmarsh. On their way out, Buko and his 350 remaining soldiers take a brief rest at the foot of an ancient Argonian pyramid known as Zise. Now, this next part is very interesting because none of these soldiers are ever seen again. Now, you might be thinking, but Warzy, they were obviously annihilated by the pursuing Argonian army. Case closed. Why is that interesting? But wait until you hear this excerpt from the Blackwater War Volume 4, written by Valenza Arvina. The specifics of the Zise massacre are a matter of much debate in the historical community. While there is a broad agreement that Buko's remaining forces were destroyed by a massive Argonian war party, the evidence supporting such a conclusion is spotty at best. Archaeological excavations around the pyramid found hundreds of bodies and discarded weapons. But the remains of at least 100 legionnaires were never recovered. This, of course, begs the question, what happened to those soldiers? There's no evidence that they were able to make it back to Cyrodiil, which leads to the possibility that they were taken prisoner. But excavations around known war camps have found no evidence of legionnaire prisoners either. This is just another in a series of mysterious disappearances that occurred during the conflict. Argonians may know more, but none have volunteered the information to any historians. This is, in my opinion, spooky, and I think it has something to do with the Hist. If you guys don't know, the Hist is the trees in Blackmarsh that give Argonians sentience. Basically, Argonians are just lizards that they eat this Hist, they eat the sap from the Hist, and it gives them thought process capabilities. It makes them functional as more than just mindless lizards. But this basically creates a hive mind for them, where the Hist controls their overall thought processes and movements and actions. Nobody knows what the goal of the Hist is. Nobody knows very, very much at all about the Hist, but they are basically hive mind drones. So whatever the Argonians did, they had to have taken them for some kind of ritual or something that the Hist wanted, and nobody knows what it is. That's so interesting to me. I know that it probably won't happen in Elder Scrolls 6, but I hope we get more info on the Hist because it is very, very, very interesting in my opinion. Regardless, this imperial defeat was unacceptable by the Elder Council, as it made the entire empire look weak in the eyes of its vassals. So General Regulus Sardicus is put in charge of the 4th Legion, and the second campaign into Blackmarsh begins. In the year 2823, General Sardicus recovers all of the territory lost in General Buko's retreat. His success comes from his strategy to defeat the forest rather than the Argonians. Knowing that the primary cause of deaths in the first campaign was disease and the second was disappearances, spooky, Sardicus decided that learning to survive in the harsh swamps of Blackmarsh, as well as destroying the surrounding forests, would lead to success. He was initially correct in this assumption until an incident known as the Great Burn occurred. In the year 2828, legionnaires set fire to a portion of forest, not knowing that it was connected underground to multiple different regions of Blackmarsh, surrounding where the legion was currently located. This fire resulted in an inferno of burning peat and detritus raged underfoot for more than 3 years. The already deadly marsh became so dangerous that the Legion was forced to give ground for the first time in the better part of a decade. Choking fumes and thundering eruptions of burning swamp gas made the area nearly uninhabitable even for Argonians. Hundreds of species of unique flora and fauna were rendered extinct, and entire tribes of Argonians were lost. Even the Legion suffered significant casualties. Now, this ends Sardicus's campaign, and he dies shortly after to unknown causes, believed to be either infection or the work of the Shadow Scales, a secretive Argonian assassin organization. After that, General Lucinia Falco is placed in command of the 4th Legion. Lucinia was one of Sardicus's closest confidants and was very familiar with his way of leading. In the year 2833, the Falco Doctrine is put into effect, changing the Imperial battle plan for Blackmarsh once again. The first thing they do is send letters of marque and temporary commissions to the countless pirates of the coast to insist in taking over portions of southeastern Blackmarsh. This is another similarity between Earth, where during the golden age of piracy, countries would send letters of marque to pirates. This basically gives them permission as well as payment to harass and attack ships of other countries. So, for instance, Britain would use letters of marque to hire pirates to attack Spanish ships, etc. The second thing the Legion changes is their actual battle style. Instead of a normal legionary battle style with groups and single file line and all that fun stuff, they split up their large legions into smaller 100-man groups and engage in guerrilla style war tactics. This two-pronged attack strategy breeds a lot of success until eventually coming to a halt just outside of the core of Blackmarsh, which is home to thick bogs and eerie silence. In the year 2836, the Argonians, for a reason that Imperial historians don't really know, all just stop fighting and return to their previous lives of farming and fishing. Although there is no formal surrender, this essentially brings the war to a close. Now, we as readers know that this was most likely an order by the Hist to all Argonians, but the Imperials were very puzzled. In the year 2837, the Empire annexes Argonia, officially creating the province of Blackmarsh, which is why I said earlier that I should have been calling it Argonia the whole time, but it's interchangeable in my mind. I don't know. In the year 2840, Riemann Cyrodiil II invades Morrowind, beginning the Fourscore War. Riemann Cyrodiil II dies during this war, but the time of his death is slightly contested. According to High King Emmerich in his book Riemann II, The Limits of Ambition, he dies in the year 2843. But according to his tomb in Sancre Tor, he dies at the age of 57, which would make the year 2851. Either way, he dies in the war. In the year 2877, Riemann III succeeds the throne. Now, this is very, very interesting. The entire story of Riemann III is so interesting, and there are a series of books known as 2920, the last year of the First Era, that cover every single month of the last era. All right, Editor Warzy here. I just figured I should jump in here and state that technically the year 2920 last year of the First Era books are considered in-universe fiction. They, historical fiction, I guess, based around real events, but they were written a couple hundred years after the events themselves, and the author who wrote them is typically a fiction author. However, I personally believe there to be some truth, if not a lot of truth, to them, just based on the events that happen. So I'm going to explain everything that the books say, and then at the end, I will tell you what is 100% canon and what I believe to be, I personally believe that most of it should be canon, just based off of the way the events work. But at the very end of explaining it, I will tell you what is considered in-universe canon and what is my theories and my beliefs. Just figured I should throw that in there because I don't want to be spreading false information. They talk about Riemann Cyrodiil III a lot in a lot of the events that we're about to cover. I would highly recommend reading it because there are some things, obviously, that I'm going to leave out just for the sake of time, but it's very interesting. You can find that series of books all in the games. But regardless, in the year 2899, Riemann sends his wife, Empress Tavia, to Castle Gideon in Blackmarsh, accusing her of treason. At some point, he eventually forms relations with a Redguard mistress by the name of Rija, eventually imprisoning her for treason as well. In the 30th century, year 2911, the Slode invade the Somerset Isles, beginning the War of Uvichil. In the year 2917, the War of Uvichil ends with the Altmer victorious. 3 years later, in the year 2920, as I mentioned earlier, this is the last year of the First Era. During this time, the Prince Julik agrees to a peace deal with Vivek from Morrowind to end the Fourscore War. After they agree to this deal, the Emperor, Riemann III, orders the capture of the Black Gate, essentially breaking the treaty immediately upon its ratification. Now, the Duke of Mournhold at the time, understandably pissed off, goes to the Night Mother to request the Emperor to be assassinated and says that the payment will arrive in 3 days by ship. Now, you may have heard of the Night Mother a time or two throughout the Elder Scrolls games, but the Night Mother that I speak of is not a shining ghost or a rotting corpse. This is the living, breathing Night Mother before the Dark Brotherhood. Yes, the Duke of Mournhold goes to visit the Night Mother, the leader of the Morag Tong. Now, both Vivec and Sotasil believe that assassinating the Emperor will only move them backwards, and they should settle the matter with diplomacy or battle. As a result, Sotasil sinks the ship, arriving with the Night Mother's payment, and so the Morag Tong does not plan to assassinate Riemann, because they are a business after all. If they're not getting paid for it, they're not going to do it. After this, the prince meets with the tribunal in Ferventhil Morrowind and assures them that the treachery was not his doing, and they all officially sign the peace treaty again. This time, the prince has the imperial royal seal, which means that anything he signs into law will be followed no matter what. Now, the only reason this happens is because his father, who was supposed to be there, is still in the imperial city with an eye injury by Rija, the one that he eventually imprisons for treason, his mistress at the time. He mentions to her that he might bring her sister Corda to court to visit, and he kind of subtly implies that he might court her, so to say. And Rija like flips out and scratches his eye out, and due to this injury, he has to stay in the Imperial City. So he sends his son to negotiate again in Morrowind. So that's why the prince has the seal, and that also leads to the events we're about to talk about. The prince receives an urgent letter from his mother that was meant for his father. It was sent to the city, meant for his father because his mother thought that he would be there, right? But since his father was in the Imperial City due to the injury, the prince is given the letter, and he hurries to where his mother is being kept in Blackmarsh. On his way to Blackmarsh, the prince is assassinated after being mistaken for his father. Obviously, this was a setup by the mother to attempt to kill Riemann Cyrodiil III, but Tavia had no way of knowing that Prince Julik would be there in his stead. And this is honestly one of the most tragic things I have read about the Elder Scrolls universe so far. This prince was seen as having great knowledge, leadership skills, and desire for peace. Vivec himself said Tamriel will be much healed when he has the throne. And just after securing the peace between Morrowind and the Cyrodiilic Empire, he is murdered, and the treaty that he was going to ratify upon his return to the Imperial City is lost. And on top of that, his own mother is the one who accidentally causes it. All she wanted to get rid of the emperor, who was honestly mad, and she ends up accidentally killing her own son. This is literally devastating, and one of the main reasons why I highly recommend reading that series of books in the game, 2920, the last year. Now, upon hearing this news, Emperor Riemann is even more paranoid and decides to officially dispose of his wife and mistress, whom he labels traitors. He signs her execution warrant as well as the warrant of Rija, and the night before Tavia's execution, she gives her closest confidant, Kothringi Zook, her final order. He is to travel to the Morag Tong and request the assassination of the true emperor. After giving her final order, Tavia steps off the ledge of her tower window, and yeah, the end. And the next day, Rija is executed, and literally seconds after Rija is executed, Riemann decides to pursue Rija's sister, Corda, and sends for her. Kothringi Zook delivers Tavia's request to the Morag Tong, and they begin plans to murder the true emperor. Eventually, the emperor is murdered by none other than Corda herself, Rija's sister, that Riemann courts afterwards. She is a secret Morag Tong spy. With both the emperor and his heir dead, potentate Versidue Shai, an Akaviri advisor to the emperor, takes control of the empire. This was, in fact, a plan by him all along. He planted the seeds of paranoia into Riemann's mind, making him imprison his wife and mistress and eventually kill them. They were not traitors. Tavia got sent to that prison in Argonia, or Blackmarsh, because Riemann was convinced that she was a traitor by his Akaviri advisor. He suggested Corda as the next partner, knowing that she was a member of the Morag Tong. Also, he could take control of the Empire. Literally insane. The series of books, 2620 or 2920, last seed or last year of the first era. Insane book series. Insane. And upon taking control, he declares the end of the first era. And thus, the second era, the Age of Chaos, begins. All right, it is Editor Warzy again. I am back to explain what is in universe canon and what is what I believe. So the complete in-universe canon events out of everything that I just said is that Empress Tavia is sent to Gideon in Blackmarsh accused of treason. The War of the Uvachil does happen between the Slode and the Altmer, and the Morag Tong assassinate Riemann Cyrodiil III, and someone assassinates the prince as well. Also, Mournhold is destroyed by Mehrunes Dagon, which I'm about to talk about later in the video. But those are the only in-universe canon events. However, I think that it's very convenient that they all die. Riemann Cyrodiil III is super paranoid, sends his wife away for treason. His son dies, he dies, and then all of a sudden the advisor takes over and he immediately establishes a new era. He gets rid of the system of heredity, and his new system goes on to last for a couple hundred years. The empire is essentially ruled by the Akaviri for a couple hundred years after this. It's just very convenient that it works out that way for him. I am just kind of a pessimist, so I guess. So that is why I believe that all these events to be true. I think that it's very possible that the advisor was slowly manipulating Riemann III into alienating himself and then eliminating him so that he could seize the throne. It's very, very plausible to me. All of this information, like I said, is found in the books 2920, the last year of the first era, and they're subtitled by month for the first 12, and then there's 15 more. I highly recommend looking them up, reading them yourselves, especially since there's some things that I left out for the sake of time, such as Mehrunes Dagon sacking Mournhold. It's all super fascinating, honestly. But that is the end of the first era. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to subscribe for more content like this. And in the next video, we'll be covering the second era and the effects that Akaviri leadership have on the Empire and the rest of Tamriel. I hope you guys enjoyed, like I said. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. Hey guys, final message from Editor Warzy here. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you guys for watching this far. I thought that I was the only person who could listen to myself talk for this long. So if you are here, thank you very much. Second of all, this video took absolutely forever to edit and research and, you know, all that fun jazz. I think in the future, I will probably be cutting the time down. So if the second era has too much information, which I think it probably will, I'm probably going to cut it into multiple parts. There's a couple of reasons. One, I don't want it to take a month for me to upload another video again. And two, when I edit, I do my editing in CapCut. And at a certain point, I get too much stuff in here that it starts to glitch out. So for example, I'm just going to show you guys, I'm going to add text and I'm going to write, you can see how laggy it is already, but I'm going to write, this is an example. I'm done typing, by the way. It just goes that slow, and if I keep typing, sometimes it completely crashes. And it's just because I have too much stuff in here. So I'm going to be whittling it down a little bit. I think the lowest I'll go is 30 minutes. Cutting wise, you know, if I make a video that isn't 30 minutes long because there's not enough substance, that's how it is. But when I'm cutting videos up into parts, the lowest I will go is 30 minutes. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. Like, I'm not doing it. Well, I just want to tell you guys the reason why I'm doing it. But yeah, the next video is going to be the second era. It might be multiple parts. We'll see. But if you guys enjoyed this part and you want to see the second era video, make sure you subscribe so you get notified when that video goes live. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.